Are you ready to build a life, business, and legacy that truly lasts? Welcome to Faithfully Invested with Alan and Stacy Joe Thorne, where faith meets real talk, biblical wisdom meets everyday life, and leadership meets laughter.
Together, we will uncover God's blueprint for leadership, marriage, and mission, helping faith-driven leaders invest in what matters most.
Each episode, we explore biblical wisdom, have real conversations, and of course, have some fun along the way. Because let's be real, walking in faith is an adventure.
It sure is. So pull up a seat, grab your coffee or your sweet tea, and join us as we steward our callings with intention. Because when we invest in His kingdom, He brings the increase. Hey friends, welcome back to Faithfully Invested, where we're diving into God's blueprint for leadership, marriage, and mission, one principle at a time.
And we are overjoyed that you decided to join us today. I'm Alan Thorne.
And I'm Stacy Joe Thorne. And we are going to talk today about one of my absolute favorite things. Alan, can you guess what it is?
Why don't you just tell them?
Worship. And I don't just mean from a platform or a stage, as some people call it on a Sunday morning.
That's right. We're not talking about just Sunday worship. We're not just talking about the song. What we're talking about is living the worship lifestyle. Mm-hmm. We believe that when you get down to it, the core of authentic worship is awe and gratitude. Unhinged gratitude isn't just about the music. It's not just about the song set. It's a lifestyle about loving God in the middle of your Monday.
Yeah.
What about loving God through your meetings and your other meetings? And then your meetings after those other meetings, right? How about even loving God when you're meal prepping through just the what we would consider the most mundane tasks of the day?
Yeah.
What about loving God when you're stuck in traffic? Hello, 95. We could complain, or we could worship in the moment. Have you ever considered that in His all-encompassing sovereignty, that God might be keeping you from something detrimental during those traffic delays? There's a perspective shift there that refuses to give the enemy a foothold. Something to consider.
Yeah, I would definitely urge you to worship when you're stuck in traffic. That's one time I always worship Him, because there's no better way to kill time, in my opinion. And it's sure beats getting, all bent
all wound up.
Yeah, all bent up over something that is totally out of my control.
Right.
So something you said, though, I want to back up to meal prepping for a second, because, y'all, I just have to tell you that the kitchen is totally Alan's jam. It is not mine. And I have seen him loving some worship music while he's doing it. And it's kind of like your sanctuary.
Well, I'm not sure I'd call it a sanctuary, but I do enjoy worshiping while working over a flaming grill.
Of course you do.
And I'd say that worship.
Of course, you don't do that in the kitchen, but.
No. From a safety perspective, we're certainly not grilling in the kitchen, but we are worshiping in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But worship looks and sounds differently to different people.
Yeah.
As a God-fearing, as a Christ-following man, I might put on some Demon Hunter or Holy Name, or I might go all the way old school back to some Striper. Those guys are great. Striper! Those guys are great musicians, and they honor the Lord with their entire lives, and that's what worship's all about. I like it a little differently than Stacy Joe, than the stuff that Stacy Joe listens to regularly. But regardless of whose song it is, as long as that song glorifies Yahweh, then all is well.
Yeah.
All right. But back to the grill. Worship the grill. Now, the grill.
You're not worshiping the grill,
We're
though.
certainly not worshiping the grill, but worship over a smoking hot grill garners praise, honor, and gratitude for the bountiful blessing of charred animal flesh.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, rule and reign, baby. let's let's get some.
Oh my goodness.
How about you, honey bunny?
Well, that was a little bit graphic, but I may not love cooking, but I will absolutely turn up the worship music and sing my heart out anytime, anywhere. I don't care. Kitchen, traffic. I even found myself whistling a worship song the other day in Aldi, and no joke. And as I was in one of the aisles, I don't know, but that's the beauty of worship. It's not about the setting.
It's not.
It's about the posture of our hearts.
Yeah.
And so let's get into what it really means to live a life that is worshiping the Lord. Yeah. And when most people hear the word worship, they think of music.
They think music.
Yeah.
It's an automatic reply.
Right.
It's like
they picture hands raised up, worship band, maybe even a fog machine, depending on the setting, but they think, like we already said, Sunday morning church in most cases. Right. But that's just not the case.
It's just not the case. Real worship, it's about so much more than a song. Yeah. It's what happens when every part of our life points to God, points to Jesus, points to the Holy Spirit. It's when our work, it's when your rest, when your decision making and your relationships all say, God, you are worthy of praise and honor.
That's so good, babe. I love Romans 12:1, where it says, present your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual act of worship.
Yeah.
So that tells us right there that worship in of itself is a lifestyle. It's not a set list. It's not a song. It means surrendering your daily life, your actions, your choices, your time, your energy, your gifts.
Absolutely.
All of it
all
to
of
God's
the above.
purposes. Yeah, all of it. And we are called to whole life worship, not just Sunday worship.
Not just Sunday worship.
Yeah.
He created 7 days.
That's right.
And like I said earlier, rest is part of our worship. So on the 7th day he rested. So we do got to honor that Sabbath. That's part of our worship.
It is.
And man, you mentioned Romans 12. Romans 12:1. All of Romans are great, but I'm telling we could do a whole season on just Romans 12:1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And maybe we will.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. But what you said, you mentioned Romans 12:1 and surrender. Now, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I think as Paul encourages God's people to present their bodies as living sacrifices, that we must first surrender our hearts to him who sees our hearts over everything else.
Yeah.
King Solomon in the Proverbs, he encourages us and he declares that we got to guard our hearts over all else, because everything that we are flows from our hearts. So once our hearts are surrendered to his will and way, then our sacrificed bodies have no trouble following suit. What do you say about that there, lovely lady?
Well, first off, I say amen to that, because it does, like we said, it all starts with the posture and a heart of surrender.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But why don't you tell us about the issue,
the challenge, right? Because we don't deal with problems. We face challenges.
That's right.
So here's the challenge. Somewhere along the way, unintentionally, maybe we made worship about a once a week event, if that, at best, a once a week event. And maybe we fell into the lie, or maybe we were deceived that if we're not on the worship team, or if we missed that Sunday service, then we lost our worship for the week. Then we missed the bus on worship if we weren't on the team, or if we weren't in church on Sunday.
Yeah, but that as we've said, that can't be further from the truth.
That doesn't even sound right.
Because worship really it's a way of life that reflects, like we said, our heart's position with our Creator. So Absolutely. It affects our heart's position with our Creator. And when we confine it to a platform, we actually miss the invitation to walk with God all week long. And I want to walk with God all week long. I don't just want to walk with him on Sunday. I want to worship him in everything that I do. And because once a week worship, it puts him in a very small box. And there is no vessel that can contain the glory of our God.
No,
there is no
not.
vessel that can contain that. So I can't put him in a box and only worship one day.
That'll preach.
Yeah.
That'll preach. There's another season right there on down the line. Write that down.
Write it down.
But,
worship is a way of life that reflects our heart's position with our Creator.
With our
Creator.
Creator. Absolutely. It's not just about the song we connect with. Friends, worship should passionately reflect his worth to us as his people. As Christ followers, we are his people. We've been bought with a price. So what's that worth to us? What's that worth to you, people? While we most often reflect on what he's done for us, shouldn't worship, I think worship should be about more than just what he's done for us, but honoring him for just who he is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, but seriously, if the Lord has done all that he's going to do for you, I'm not saying that's it, but just, case scenario.
Yeah.
If he's done all that he's going to do for you, is he still worthy of your worship?
Oh, all day, every day.
All day,
every day.
I can speak for myself, and I can, all day, every day. You're darn right he's worthy of worship.
Yeah, I can tell you there have been seasons where I have led worship on a platform and I still go home feeling empty. And it wasn't because God changed.
Yeah.
He doesn't change. He is a never changing God. But I might have been singing with my mouth, but my heart wasn't postured properly. My heart was distracted and just not focused on him. Probably on the world or circumstances surrounding me, or maybe whatever happened in the parking lot before we got into the church. I mean, who knows?
Right. Hard telling it.
But my heart wasn't postured and I was distracted.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Go figure. I think any one of us could relate to that. I used to think that worship, it's not really my thing, man. I don't play an instrument. I wasn't super expressive. But then I realized that when I'm most times when I'm in the kitchen or I'm over that flaming grill,
listening to Stryper.
Sometimes, Need to Breathe's another good one. I like Need to Breathe.
Is good. Yeah.
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
But when I'm serving my family or when I'm out in the woods with the guys, that's a good place, man. Yeah, out there beholding his glory, saying all this was created.
Yeah.
When I'm out in the woods with the guys, or whenever I get hit with a scripture out of nowhere, when he just drops the Logos word on me and says, "Hey, check that out, man." And I marvel over how it relates to my current situation. In these moments, I have no choice but to stop and worship the Lord and keep worshiping the Lord. It's a perpetual cycle of worship through our days. You had mentioned that worshiping every day, not just on Sunday, and I'll second that, and I'll third that even, because I've seen me without Jesus, and I
Me
want
too.
I want to make sure that I invite him into every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, we were all created differently, but we were created relationally.
Right.
To love God and to love each other.
Yeah.
So worship, it looks different for each one of us.
Right.
So don't get hung up on the song. It's about way more than just the music, people.
Well, yeah, because when we approach anything with a surrendered heart and a genuine love for God, it becomes holy. Our everyday actions are transformed into worship. That's why leading from a place of surrender is so powerful, because when we view our work, our business, our time, and even our physical bodies as offerings to the Lord, everything we do becomes an act of devotion.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Everything. Folding laundry?
I did that earlier today. And
Right?
yes, I was even, worshiping him through that.
I can promise you she was whistling at least while she was folding the laundry. And,
but again, it's not about the song. It was the posture of my heart while I was while I was
Exactly.
folding the laundry.
excellent point. There's the point. It's the
Right.
posture of the heart. What about managing our business with integrity?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And here's what about loving your neighbor when you don't agree or when it's inconvenient?
Ooh, yeah.
I would say especially that.
Probably especially that.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's not always convenient.
It's not always convenient, but
and I can attest that we're not always the most neighborly people,
but
we're doing better at it.
progress, not perfection,
That's
right?
it.
Right.
So let's get to some super practical ways.
Woo, I
that
love practical.
I know you say that every time I say the word practical.
I don't know. I think it might be a thing.
but here's 5 ways that we can start, and I say we because we're preaching to ourselves in this too.
Absolutely.
How we can start living a deeper life of worship.
Yeah.
So Alan mentioned earlier, about awe. So start your day with awe. And I mean awe for the Father, for
Yeah.
our Creator. So before you reach for your phone, take a breath. Thank God that you are here to see another day,
Yeah.
and realign your heart from go mode to grace mode. Because when we walk in grace,
Yeah.
when we don't walk in go, but when we walk in grace,
Yeah.
it's so much better.
Yeah. And you said start your day with awe,
Yeah.
It's such a common, and I love that, start our day with awe, because we start our day with the Lord.
Yeah.
And everyone says, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
But you know who's actually awesome? Everything's not awesome, but
Right.
God is actually awesome. So we should start our day with awe.
Well, and to that point, someone said that to me not that long ago about the word awesome. And it's really made me start to reflect now on when I use that word.
Right.
So I might even be I used to type all the time in a text, oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. But now I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just great, because he is the only thing that is awesome.
He is the only
Yeah.
thing that's awesome.
So,
Right on.
sorry.
So number 2 is welcome worship into our dailies.
Yeah.
Into our dailies. Talk to God while you drive. I used to listen to music all the time. Now I'm into some biblically based and podcasts and whatnot.
Mhm.
But sometimes, usually first thing in the morning, just talk with God while you
Yeah.
drive. It's quiet. And so talk to God while you drive. Invite him along on your errands. Turn cleaning into praise and worship time.
Or folding laundry.
Or folding laundry. This might sound silly, but friends, do you believe?
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to,
Yeah.
what we believe. So I ask you, do you believe that he wants your spirit to be uplifted through even the most menial tasks? Because he does.
Yeah.
What about inviting him in when we're doing something that we don't want to do?
Ugh. Yeah.
We do it all the time. We might do it daily. We got something that we don't want to do around here. Most often we call it eating the frog.
Eating the frog.
So you might
Yeah.
not want to do it, but it needs done.
Mm-hmm.
Turn on some praise and worship and watch the atmosphere shift. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. What happens? Invite him into your dailies and see what happens. It doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. It just has to be from our heart.
That's it. I love that, babe. So
Yeah.
number 3 is let obedience be your offering. And that's tough sometimes.
Yeah.
But saying yes to God when it costs you something,
Yeah.
oh, that's worship.
Yeah.
I mean, forgiveness when it costs you, Pride.
Pride. Well,
When it costs you pride and you have to be humble
there's
to
another
forgive
season.
someone. Yeah, that's a whole nother season. Generosity, that's worship. Our tithe, whether it's our time or whatever it is, it all counts,
Yeah.
And what I want to say about that is, and I just heard this said again today, I've heard it numerous times, but someone's blessing is on the other side of your obedience.
Yeah.
When God calls you to do something, it's not always for you.
Yeah. The
Oftentimes
blessing,
it's for someone else.
every time I've said yes, there's a blessing. And it might not be my blessing, but it's someone's blessing.
That's right.
There is a blessing. He always blesses the yes.
Yes. Always.
Always.
So what else?
So number 4
Yeah.
is create a worship-friendly atmosphere.
Mm.
That's good.
There you go.
She's really good at doing that. We're really good at doing that, but she models it really well.
Oh,
And,
thanks, babe.
So so create a worship-friendly atmosphere. Fill your space with reminders of who he is
Yeah.
and how good he's been to you. Whew. I was just reflecting
Yeah.
on that the other day. I was like, Lord, you're just so good to me.
Yeah.
So how do we fill our space with that? Family pictures, pictures of friends, scriptures that have changed our life perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We have a dear friend of ours, her and her husband do ministry with us, and she had this little block of wood, and she painted it, and then she sanded it, and then she painted it, and then she painted blessed on it.
Yeah.
And that hangs in our bedroom above a TV that's never on.
Never.
But every day when we wake up, we
First thing
see
we see.
blessed.
Yeah.
And that reminds us that we don't need that. That reminds us of our friends and how blessed we are to have them as friends, brothers and sisters in Christ and ministry partners. But it reminds us of, man, he has brought us so far from where we came from, and how blessed we actually are.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Sandra.
right? August. Yeah.
Yes.
So notable verses I mentioned that notable verses that have changed our life. I'd have to go with Romans 12:2. That was one of the first ones for me, and so on. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Whatever glorifies God, we need to glorify. We should be. We don't need to. We should want to. As his sons and daughters, we should want to glorify him by recalling and reflecting his goodness in our lives. And as we recall and reflect his goodness and all that he's done, and just who he is with us and for us, that shuts down the noisy distractions that keep us from his still small voice of truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Still small voice of truth.
So number 5 is surrender something daily. So ask the Lord, is there anything that I need to lay down today? I mean, worship is an invitation to trust him more, to put our faith in our Creator, to honor him and with our trust and our obedience and all of that. But Lord, what do I need to surrender to you today?
Right.
What do I need to lay down? What thought do I need to lay down? Or what family member maybe do I need to lay down?
Right.
And Lord, how can I worship you through my surrender?
Yeah, that's good. That is so. What do we need to lay down? And once we lay that down, once we release that, what he wants us to release, then we have room to receive what he wants us to receive.
Yeah.
Right on. That's
because he always gives us something.
He always fills that space.
Right. When we surrender something to him, he always gives us back
when
a truth
we're
in
willing
return. Yeah.
to surrender.
Right.
He will fill that space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So worship, it's more than emotions. It's not just about a feeling. It's not about feeling something. It's about giving something.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing that we can give him is our heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's your challenge for this week. Okay. Find one place in your everyday rhythm, one place. Maybe it's your commute, like Alan said. Fortunately, I don't have a commute anymore, but it's
Talk
in my
about a
morning.
blessing.
It is a blessing, but it's in my morning devotions with him. It's, maybe it's your morning coffee, or maybe it's folding the laundry, and invite our good Father into that space. Ask him, how can I turn this into worship? Maybe it's doing the dishes. I personally hate the dishes, but maybe I need to learn to turn it into worship.
Maybe so. Maybe there's work. We're all works in progress. It's important to remember that worship doesn't have to be loud, long, or lyrical. It just needs to be authentically from our heart.
For sure. And we'd love to hear how you are living worship this week. So tag us on social media at Faithfully Invested, or shoot us a message at our site, faithfullyinvested.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we really want to know how you're doing worship this week.
Yeah, we'd definitely love to hear from you. So next time, that's a wrap for this week, but next time we're going to be talking about something that we've all faced. The question will be, what do we do when God seems distant? We've been there, and we've got some encouragement for you.
Yes, we do. So if this episode encouraged you, let us know, share it with a friend, DM us your thoughts, and please leave us a 5-star review.
Yeah.
But until then, keep your heart tuned to his faithfulness, and remember that when you're faithfully invested, God brings the increase.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Faithfully Invested with Alan and Stacey Joe. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or helped you see your calling more clearly, don't keep it to yourself.
That's right. Share it with a friend, leave a 5-star review, and keep leaning into God's blueprint for your life, your leadership, and your legacy. So until next time, remember, when you invest in his kingdom,
He brings the increase.